I'm surprised it's taken me this long to record this particular episode, considering like the first 15, 16 episodes has been all about esports. This episode right here is about events, which esports is nothing if not basically a collection of events based on different titles. So I am way too late, but thankfully I've locked in an incredible guest who knows the ins and outs, or at least I see it that way, knows a lot more than I do. So today I'm joined by the managing director of EPIC.LAN, Mr. John Winkle. Thank you very much for taking the time, mate.
No worries.
Did I hype you up a bit too much there, saying you know the ins and outs?
I'd hope so by now.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because how long have you been putting on events?
19 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. As a hobby for 15 of those. But still, it was a hobby that was taking up as much time as I spent in a full-time job. And then I left my previous employment, we'll say, about 4 or 5 years ago, and had the chance to do this full-time. I had to be encouraged, actually. We don't want to go off on a career story of John, but
No, go for it.
There was a few industry people that were like, "You've been doing EPIC.LAN for this long. Like, why don't you just make it into something full-time and viable?" So now I get to do this every day of the week, and I'm not going to lie, I quite enjoy it.
I imagine it's one of the more stressful jobs as well.
Yes and no. There are some that are worse than others. Our own events, we've got a format, and yes, okay, things can go wrong. I'm sure we'll cover it during the next few minutes, and things you can't plan for as much as you try. But there is a format to our events. We know what to expect. We know, like, we've been at the current venue for 10 years next year, so we know the staff there. We know every corridor and cupboard, and like we've got so many expertise and so much kit and so many spares that we get it. The more stressful thing for me now is other people's events rather than our own, because we're outside of putting on EPIC.LAN, which is the thing I guess that people know us for. Every other week of the year, we're doing tech support for other people's events and broadcasts, and that comes with more pressure because you're not screwing up your own event, then you're screwing up something much bigger, and that could be anywhere from like a couple of PCs to a tier 1 event that you're running the network for, and everyone forgets that the network underpins the entire event. There's no broadcast, there's no game. So yeah, they're far worse for me these days.
Yeah, just like someone else spends all that time planning and stuff, and then like if something happens on your end, I can see that. But like you say, it started as a hobby, so is that like you creating events so you could compete and stuff back when esports was
You
like
say
what
compete.
It is now, like,
I mean, it's
like play for fun with friends.
Yeah, it was that. Like 19 years ago, the prize was a mouse mat. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I used to attend Insomnia, and I was driving back from Insomnia. The first one I'd been to was like, this is way too far. Like, you knackered after a 4-day LAN party, driving back, like swerving all over the place, trying to concentrate on the roads. I was like, why? There's nothing locally to me. So I just set up a local village hall LAN party with 50 odd people. First one sold out just because there was nothing north. And it's just, it's grown organically to the point where it stopped being a hobby. Like, there's a point from an event management point of view, 50 people in a village hall is one thing, 100, 200, 300 people, prize pools, publishers, insurance, power distribution, networking. It stopped being something we could treat as a hobby because people's safety's on the line. The event could get shut down by a publisher if we pick a game that we're not supposed to be running. Like, all of those things start to come into it. So yes, hobby, but felt like a second full-time job. Certainly, yeah, since we moved to our current venue 10 years ago, that's I think the point where it didn't feel, I don't want to say it didn't feel like fun, but yeah, we had to take things significantly more seriously from that point.
Right, yeah, and from that first event that you started as like hobby in the village hall, that's exactly what's transformed into EPIC.LAN now. So you've been basically like iterating on this project for, as you say, like 19 years or something.
Yeah, it was a different name back then because again, this could be an entire podcast in itself. But we built up the previous named event, and I stupidly sold it off, thinking it was going to get investment and I was going to get a job doing this way too early for its time. the people who took it on ruined it, ran it into the ground. So we waited for them to go under, and then we started it all back up again. But it gave we actually, what we have now is better than what we had before. We learned a lot, we changed a lot. The brand was crap before. So we didn't take a break. Like as soon as that other company went under and took a lot of people's money with them, yeah, we reformed, and this is where we're at now. So with Epic 37 coming up next, so yeah, under the EPIC.LAN name.
Not bad, yeah. And I don't know much of that history because like when you started it, I would have been 8 years old.
Thanks for pointing that out.
So I'd have been playing like Spider-Man on the PS1 or PS2 or something like that at that point. So I was firmly not aware of it all. But only a few years later is when I started becoming aware with Call of Duty and stuff, So I was almost there. But no, I didn't even know there was a previous name or anything like that. I need to do a bit of research if that information is just floating about online. Because that sounds juicy.
It's yeah. For another topic, and I'll quite openly talk about it. I just don't want to distract people when we're chatting about it. It's part of the UK esports spicy history that went on between 10 and 12 years ago of companies buying everything up and oddly enough, trying to own and gatekeep esports, which I know is a topic that you're very fond of.
No, I don't think I always shy away from that. I will never discuss gatekeeping and stuff in esports. No,
it's happened in many cycles going back through the last 19 years of history.
Yeah. So. And I wonder if it's worse now or if it was worse then. And part of me thinks it was actually probably worse back then because it was easier to, I assume, financially to snap up companies and stuff, right? And whereas things are a bit more established now.
Like we didn't know what we knew back then. It certainly shaped how I manage EPIC.LAN these days. Like this is going to seem like a huge brag, but we get approached probably every 2 or 3 months about investment or trying to buy us up, which is a huge compliment. But I've already seen something that's been like my baby ruined before, and I know where I want to take this. Like we're very, very clear on EPIC.LAN remaining as a community grassroots event. No matter how many investors say, yeah, but we could give you tens of thousands of pounds, you can make it bigger, better, put it in an arena with a big stage, and like, we don't want that. That's not what other people do that, and they do it really, really well. But if we stop doing EPIC.LAN, then what would be the community grassroots esports event for people to start at in the UK? Somebody else would have to do it. So,
grassroots is grossly, I guess, like underdeveloped and undersupported, at least. Maybe not it is actually in terms of pipelines and stuff, right? We've got like guilds trying to do some guild academy thing, which is seemingly just halted to a stop or is just never spoken about. And as you say, like there's insomnia events and stuff, but there's no real like structure there. But also like having like your events as a constant, I'm sure is huge for UK esports, which it's not as developed or at least well funded as other I guess like continents and regions. If you look at North America, the amount of money there versus here in the UK, like we can do with whatever we get. So like it's a great thing for you to stick around and do what you're doing and have that mission in mind.
But it does have its challenges that we'll talk about around how you budget to create a grassroots event in the UK where there is no support at all, like no government support, no publisher support. Everything has to be self-funded, and it doesn't get the huge numbers of the millions of views on Twitch to get the big brands involved. So yeah, it changes the model over here quite. It does make it a lot harder.
So the format for this, I was thinking like kind of run through from ideation to execution. Obviously, quite briefly, we haven't got like 17 hours or however long it would take to go real in depth with that stuff. But so you can tell me if I'm wrong on this front. But I was thinking, right, if I was going to put on an event when I was doing a little bit of prep for this, if I was going to put on an event, what's the very first thing I would do? And my thinking was I need to choose the titles that are going to be available there, mainly because I think you have to know that you can use certain games, right? And also scheduling if it's a title that has a lot of events going on, I assume you probably want to stay away from that.
We might not have a choice.
And also you want to know the community that's available for it and stuff. So that's what comes to mind first, like what games you're going to pick.
I guess For us, with an established event with games already set, I hadn't thought that far back. So, like in EPIC.LAN's case, we try and keep our titles at least for 12 months. At the end of the year, we then review what do we drop, what do we add back into the mix. Well, I guess if we were starting from scratch, like anything, there's going to be some element of market research. That would include the games, the titles, all the challenges around that. You've mentioned about publishers and permissions. There are some who not only do you have to get permission, but they will give you a calendar that you have to work within as well. So Riot being an example where Riot are unlikely to grant you a license to run an event if it clashes with any Riot-owned tournaments. It's not 100% the case. There is a point more recently where the Riot office has had more people in the UK like working with people like us, where they'll go, actually, EPIC.LAN's not going to take viewership away from VCT. They're a few miles apart, so we don't mind you clashing with that, but maybe VRL is a little bit closer, so we want you to avoid. And also, we wouldn't get the teams attending, and if both clash. So yeah, there's that market research piece, but the first thing I had down on my list is actually venue, because venue availability is really tough, and even more so now post-COVID, because everybody's trying to catch up with 2 years of no events. So in the past, where you'd have venues like try to beg for your business, they're all fully booked at the moment. So even with our venue, say our venue, like we don't own it, but it feels like it sometimes. Even with the venue we use, the conversations start around 18 months in advance for the dates. So, and that's with an established relationship with a pattern of events that doesn't change year on year. So for bigger venues, you could be looking anywhere from 18 months to 2 years to try and plan those dates. But then the publishers won't know what they're doing. So they won't have set their calendars. So you'd sort of have to, like, in our case, we have to set a date and then we have to be a little bit heavy handed and go, we've got to run it on these dates. We don't care what's going on around. We know when Insomnia is going to be every year. We avoid that. We don't want to clash with Insomnia. We want players and teams to attend both events. So why screw over both events and put them on the same weekend? There's no point. Maybe in the past we would have been a bit more hostile like that, but we're all friends these days, and we want the events to succeed. So yeah, it's venue. It's top of my list. And even within that, like, you're not just gonna pick up the phone to the first venue on your wish list and go, hey, we want to bring a load of gamers into your space. Can we have it for a week? Maybe, depending on the event and the build and the breakdown. You got to be scouting venues. You got to have huge list of requirements: power, internet, ventilation, access, overnight use, parking, location, public transport, hotels in the areas. All of those things you got to factor in, and you're going to go and visit a load of venues, and they either won't want you or it won't be suitable. So that lead in is huge.
I see why you stick with the same venue for a decade. That seems to eliminate a lot of the hassle that comes with having to scout out those. Then
we don't just do our own events, so we do client events as well, and sometimes we get approached with a brief where they want us to find the venue for their event as well. So we still have to go through that process, whether that's a film shoot or a live stream or a tournament or something corporate like a press event. So we still have to go through that and starting to try and build some good relationships with venues. But yeah, even our own, it's big lead in.
But even with that, so kind of like you're almost at the mercy of certain publishers, and if they don't want to play fair, like they can royally make things difficult and be a pain in the ass should they wish.
They can, and there are plenty that we've been okay. Like we've got a good relationship with the publishers we work with, and there are some games that we just don't want to touch because we don't even want to try and start that conversation. Like we dropped Overwatch when they franchised because their model was very clearly, if there are any other Overwatch events on during your weekend, we're not going to grant you a license, but we might not be able to tell you about that until 2 or 3 months before. Well, at that point, I've booked a venue, put ticket sales on, and we just had to walk away from Overwatch at that point and go, this isn't going to work for us. At least when Riot went down that route with Valorant, they had a far more collaborative approach to it, and we could at least have a discussion with them. Blizzard, they sent me their new guidelines at the time and said, "Will this cause you any problems?" I just went, "Yes." That was it. And that was.
And then they replied, "Tough."
Pretty much, yeah. And then there are some publishers who just don't let people run esports events. Just thinking certain consoles.
I don't know what the thinking is there though, because like surely it benefits them to have it as long as it's not ruining any of their plans. I suppose, like if they're trying to like rule with an iron fist.
Where esports is pretty much a banned term, and they've actively shut down events, certainly on the fighting game side of things. I'm trying not to drop too many names. So some just don't seem to want, essentially, people like us to market their games for them and build their communities and their play bases. And then you've got the Valve end of the scale who just don't care, which is great. Okay.
So do you still have to contact them and get permission and stuff?
No, there are guidelines out there, and there are certain things that they don't want you to do, but they're so loose in a good way. But then at the same time, if you want their help, they won't get involved either. Again, the Riots of the world is now a two-way relationship. Ubisoft is the same, so we've got a good relationship with both of those, who will not only collaborate over scheduling, but potentially support the event as well. Valve are completely hands off, which is great because we know we can just run CS, do whatever we want with it within reason, get any sort of brands involved, and we don't have to worry about dates or scheduling. So for us, like CS has been our core game since we started doing esports, and it's still our biggest community by far. I think we peaked at something like 43 CS teams, one event just before COVID.
Not bad.
Yeah, you've just got both ends of scale, and then there are others where, let's talk Call of Duty as an example, where there's an extra layer of approval in there, where not only do you need publisher permission, you also need the home nation's team's permission.
Yes, I was going to ask about this. Yeah.
So if we were to do Call of Duty, which we're not going to do, I've got nothing against Call of Duty. It's just not a title that fits with our events. We'd not only have to get publishers' permission, but we'd have to get Royal Raven's permission as well to host something in their territory, because they act as the license holder as well. So multiple tiers of approval for something like that.
Yeah, because the first time I really realized how messy the territory stuff was, I think it was London Spitfire at the time was like going to South Korea to do like a fan event, but a team that's owned the basically like had the rule of this particular place, and they just like shut them out and said, no, you can't like host some like fan activation event there because this is our territory and that's that. And I was like, oh damn, this could get messy if they ever wanted to go that way. And yeah, Call of Duty was named to me when I was speaking to I think it was like a university esports organizer in the UK. They were on about Call of Duty, and then I was thinking, oh yeah, well, Ravens have got that now. So if they don't want you to host an event, like it's a tricky one.
I honestly couldn't comment on whether they're supportive or not. It's just a game that we've avoided, and that sounds like I'm saying it negatively. It's say we've got enough titles for us at the moment. It might be something we'll look at again in the future. It's just not. Yeah, I'm sure at some point we'll have to cross that bridge, whether for us or for clients. But
that makes sense. And so what we've actually touched quite a few points there, because I had venue, I had scheduling, I had the game, I had speaking to the publishers and stuff. So what comes next for you? Because my thinking is once you've got all of that stuff worked out, then does the staff kind of come first, or does like marketing the event and incentivizing people to attend, or is it something else entirely?
Probably budget. I mean, your venue.
Right? Oh, that small thing. Yeah.
Exactly. The venue is probably your single biggest cost, depending on the scale of the event. In our case, it is. Just because the size of the space we use, the amount of time that we're in there for, because it's not just the days that we're in running the event. There's days either side, and venues will quite often charge you exactly the same price as a live day as they will setup days, even though you're not bringing in any income on those days. So, like even for EPIC.LAN, which we try to run as a community level event, it's still a 5-figure sum for that venue for the week that we're in there. So yeah, building that budget, and then how are you going to cover those costs? What is the income model? And I went to there's an esports venue summit in Wales a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
Which is
somehow I missed that.
Yeah, well, no, you really didn't. It wasn't aimed at esports people. I think that's the problem. So I was asked to go and speak there, and it was aimed at venue operators who wanted to bring esports into their venues. And I just dropped, in true me fashion, I just dropped the casual bombshell of, if you're looking at doing this to make any money, don't bother, because esports events generally don't make money. It's a massive marketing exercise, usually from a publisher, to show off their game and get this, get people watching on stream and buy the game, buy in-game items and so on. For somebody like us, where we're not a publisher and we don't get that publisher support, like what our motivation to putting on those events is just to cover the cost. So yeah, venue's probably your biggest part of the budget. Then you start piling in things like security. That's probably our second or third highest. AV and power distribution, so that's up there in our top three. And then you've got crew costs, and even, I know it's a banned word on Hitmarker, but even with sort of volunteer crew members, there is still it's a reality of major events, whether it's Olympics to F1 to football, but there is still a cost to that of accommodation and food, and that's probably the next, whatever the crew costs are. I've worked on events where the crew has been, for something small, 40 to 50 people, you put them in a hotel for a week, and that's all of a sudden a massive cost. Yeah. We did, I think it was the Red Bull Wallaloo 5 event last year out in Heidelberg, and that was an entire hotel booked out of crew, talent, players, not to mention all the cost of getting them there and back. So just, silly money on those sort of logistics and crew costs. That they're probably your top 4 or 5 in terms of money. It's assuming you don't have to pay to run some of the games. There are some of the fighting game publishers where you have to pay the publisher to have the license as well. So yeah, that bit's crazy. Again, it's like we're marketing your game.
They don't understand the function of esports, I don't think, at this point, right?
No.
As you say, it's effectively marketing. It's good for them if you run a event that shows the game in a good light, effectively. Like, it's not going to do any harm to their
some
game.
Again, it doesn't hit us because we, in licensing terms, for most of the games, we fall into this sort of community license category, whatever each publisher calls it. But there are tiers of licenses with most of the publishers where big commercial events, they will expect some money from it. Unless it's their event and they're putting it on, they're going to charge people for it. It's just, okay,
bloody hell. They'll just make it even harder for others to stay alive in esports.
We wanted, again, I won't name the exact publisher, but we wanted to bring in a fighting game element to our events, just because we were very FPS heavy and MOBA heavy at the time. So we just wanted a different flavor, and we started talking to them, and one of them literally said, "You're not going to be able to afford it, so don't bother." Okay, bye then.
Jesus, at least it saved you some time, I suppose. Trying to haggle that, but I don't understand the mindset. So the moral of the story there is, like, don't bank on being able to get any title you want. Like, it's not going to work that way. You need to. It's a case by case basis, because esports, people refer to esports as one thing, but it's just a collection of sub communities based around different games, and each one's rolled in a different way and ran in a different way. It's got its own nuances, so you have to treat it as such.
Yeah, research the game, research the publisher. Say Valve stuff, pretty safe. Do almost whatever you want. There are others where, for really low level tournaments, if you are looking at grassroots stuff, they will have these community licenses, which are pretty much read through them, and as long as you don't have sponsors from a list of categories that they don't want to associate with their game, like alcohol, gambling, crypto, the usual stuff, then you can run it and you don't need extra permission to do that. So us in StarCraft, I know I've said Overwatch, even within the Blizzard family, the rules for Overwatch and the rules for StarCraft are different. So StarCraft, we just got a website. It's literally read and agree to these terms, and then we can run whatever we want with StarCraft as long as we stick to those rules. So
I guess they're hardly like doing esports around StarCraft as much as obviously they've got
keeping it going.
Yeah, they've got a huge entity around the Overwatch esports community and stuff, right? So they've got a vested interest in that more so than the StarCraft stuff right now.
And that league has its own sponsors and partners. Like, just to give you an example, like when Overwatch first went franchised, in their list of banned categories, there was this catch-all. So things like clothing was in there, energy drinks were in there, so that's half of esports sponsorship gone.
Yeah.
But then there's like a catch-all line of and any other hardware providers. So that rules out like
everything,
manufacturers, peripherals, components. It's like we yeah. Anyway, that's
well that your HyperX's, Logitech's and stuff make up a big part. Obviously, it's getting a bit better now, I suppose, in terms of diversity of partners. But like, they're still the majority across. Like, if you go to any like semi-established and above organization, for example, and look, they will have a hardware partner and probably a hydration partner of some sort. Yeah, energy drink partner of something, right?
So that was all
cutting
because
that stuff off is mad.
Yeah, because their top level had been spot. I think season 1 was Omen HP, so they were basically saying they're the only people that can be involved. So, well, they aren't going to sponsor our event. So, anyway. So yeah,
there's a lot of politics involved, even at this level. It's worrying.
Yeah,
it's not as easy as just saying, right, we're hosting an event here at this time. Show up and let's get going.
Exactly. I think we talked about,
unfortunately,
what costs money, and then you've got to work out what's your model to actually fund the event. Then where's it going to come from? Ours, for probably the first 15, 16 years, our revenue model was purely ticket sales. We had no other income source, which was like unheard of. Like, because when you're putting on much bigger events, you're assuming publisher money, merchandise, in some countries, public money as well, which we absolutely don't get in the UK. Sponsors, the bigger brands getting involved. You hear of the sort of ESL, Intel level deals. But for us, it was, well, tickets we sell is that's 100% of our income was based on ticket sales. That's evolved a little bit now, and actually that was a lot down to COVID. Oddly, one of the benefits for us in COVID is we kept going throughout. So when other events were stopping, we decided we're going to keep. I mean, we were putting on online events. We weren't doing some secret underground physical event. And we gained a lot of support from brands who really liked what we were doing, because we were doing it. Like, we didn't have to. There was no reason for us to keep putting events on. We were doing it because we felt people wanted stuff to do while they were locked up at home. So we tried to put on an online equivalent of our events as best as we could. And that's when we picked up the likes of Intel. Like when Intel came knocking on our door going, we want to work with you because we really like what you're doing at a community level. We do big esports elsewhere. Like, we want to do something very, very different. And then our model started to change a little bit, but we're still, I'd say, 75% ticket funded. We do a little bit of merch. We do it again. It's an old school grassroots event. There's a bit of a tuck shop sort of thing going on. Where actually sells more water than energy drinks these days. Oddly,
that's good.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that it's still like ticket sales for us are the biggest proportion of our income,
right?
And that we set those ticket prices on a break-even basis. So we don't aim. People never believe me, but certainly with the crew, we quite openly share the numbers and the accounts behind the events. Our aim is just to break even. So we set that ticket price based on, as long as we get this many people who bought tickets at this price, we'll cover the costs of it, and then we're happy. Anything above that we do make goes on kit, because there's a warehouse out there full of stuff that makes these events happen, and that has to come from somewhere. anything to do with like salaries for us comes from other projects, the stuff we do the other
Right.
49 weeks of the year. So yeah, that's why our ticket sales are where they're at. And like when we were chatting before the event, you spotted that I tweeted something out about energy prices. Who'd have thought that energy prices were going to get to the point where they affect our ticket prices? But it's because our office warehouse heating bill's gone from like 40 quid a month to 400 quid a month just in the past 12 months, and we have to pay for stuff like that. We've got a van that we have to get the kit to the event. The transport supply that we use to get, it's like an 18-ton truck for all of our stuff to the event. They've put their prices up by 5% just because of the cost of fuel. And that's already a couple of grand. You stick 5% on a couple of grand's worth of transport and logistics, and it all mounts up. So when something like that hits us, we have to pass those costs on. VAT going up and down during COVID, like it benefited us in some ways, but not in others. Like again, VAT is a whole other mess that we have to worry about. So yeah, anyway.
So I guess like transparency on that front will help massively. Instead of just hiking prices up and just saying this is a new cost now, like you guys seem pretty transparent about like, look, like we're doing this for you guys effectively. We're not here to make big bucks off of it. So yeah, unfortunately, we have to put the prices up because of the factors outside of our control. That's much more understandable than you just putting it up and people thinking, oh wait, tickets have gone up £10 per now. They're making however much more profit than what they were before. But there will be some cynical folks who think like that. Yeah. But you mitigate a lot of that by being transparent, which you guys seem to be. So
we get a lot of people. It's like this happens almost yearly on Twitter. Somebody goes, you have 700 people at the event paying 80 quid. So they just do a straight up multiplication. And then they go, the prize pool for the event's only £4,000. So you must be making profit on the difference between the two. It's like, no, it's all of these things we have to pay for you to be here for that event. Yes, the prize pool's part of it. And the prize pool we link to ticket numbers as well. So the more people buy, it's a classic tiered prize pool. So again, people see that their money is boosting that prize pool. But yeah, the number of people who think our only cost is just paying out the prize pool, it's mad. I ended up writing a whole article once on the website. Never mind justifying it. Like I can break down the costs for people, but this isn't meant to be a sales pitch for EPIC.LAN. But any other event, right? EPIC.LAN's currently 80 quid for 4 days. So 20 quid a day. Yeah. What else can you do as entertainment? Because our events are aimed at people going to play games for 4 days and have fun. They're not super serious top class esports event where we're attracting salaried players. The idea is you're meeting up with your friends, you're probably playing on LAN for the first time in person. You may go off to be that top class player in the future, but yeah, it's 4 days of fun for 20 quid a day. What else can you do? Like you can't go to a gig, you can't go to any sort of sports games, you barely go to the cinema for 20 quid now. So anyway.
Well, in Scunthorpe, it's £5 a ticket, mate. I could go see 4 films a day. But that's quite unique to Scunthorpe, I imagine. And it's directly because of COVID. No one wanted to pay the £7. So
yeah, exactly.
But apart from that, mate, yeah. So I could go watch like Bullet Train 4 times a day for 4 days in a row, I suppose. But that'll get a little bit boring. I'd rather go to a LAN event and hopefully beat some people at some games, right? So no, it's very, very good value, even with all the associated costs, and just I guess it's an opportunity for people to meet players they've been playing with online for years or months, especially during COVID and stuff, right? So like it's I think that's a good thing for you guys in that you probably create some like sentimental value there, like, oh my god, we're all gonna meet there, and that's the first time we met and we played together and we had these great memories and blah blah blah, and then they're likely to come back. I would assume some of them, at least. Maybe I don't imagine you've got 100% retention rate, but
we've got regular faces that we've seen. You're both on the esports and casual side for years now, which is great. And yeah, you're right. And a lot of the teams, it's not just about being in the hall for 4 days. It's go out for a Nando's when they get a break, or during the game. Like we've had to disqualify teams for being at Nando's before and
really?
but It's, again, different story.
UK esports, man.
Yeah, I think UK CS Go website had a story that they published last event about 2 teams that got up in a tactical pause and went to the bar and did Jaeger bombs.
Oh,
But again, when you read the detail, it was the Inters, so it's like you've been knocked out of the main tournament. It's just for fun. There was an issue,
right.
so like they weren't playing for the main tournament. But it ended up being picked up by like publications in other countries, going EPIC.LANs just go to drink Jaeger bombs, and that's not quite the case. But
No, that's only part of it. As well as video games too, as well as the Jaegers. So in terms of we've touched on attendees, like you'll get some return folks, right? But like I think a big part, especially on like smaller events, I suppose, a huge element of it is like securing attendees and getting people to actually buy the tickets. I think that's probably a point of worry for some people as well. Like, oh, what if we can't sell all of these tickets, right? Like we've done all of this groundwork, budgeted, like got everything in place, and now it's just up to other people. It's out of our control in some ways as to whether people decide to spend their money, right?
We've seen it with so many events that have been announced in the past. Again, I'm not going to throw people who are trying to put new events on under the bus because that's not fair. we were there, like, but we see so many events get announced, the venue gets announced, the dates, and it just doesn't go ahead because people haven't bought tickets in the first place, and it is, it's ticket funded. Some of that might be because they've not done the research. Is there even a market for that game? Like, we get asked so many times, like, "Oh, run a LAN for this title. It'll guarantee it'll sell out," and I know it won't. Like, we just know the player base isn't there. Like, we stick to fairly obvious titles, like CS and Valorant for us. We know underpin the event. We know we'll get the teams there, and then that allows us to take some risk with and StarCraft. I shouldn't forget StarCraft because they attend, like, the entire UK StarCraft community come to every one of our events. So we know 30 to 40 people will be there. So we've got a pretty good idea of how many teams we're going to get and where that is within our break even, and the casual players as well, because it's not all esports with our events. That then lets us take some risks. So we're bringing League of Legends and Siege back next event with some publisher support or at least approval. But we don't know how they're going to go because, like, when was the last? Can't think when we last ran League of Legends. It was ages ago. And Siege has had an interesting period over the last 2 or 3 years where UKIN has developed into NPL, so it sort of created this next tier up across Europe. But what's happened to the UK scene while NPL's been getting set up and developed? We don't know. It's probably got to be built up again. So they're a bit more high risk to us, but we wouldn't, like, if you said to me put on a completely open casual or BYOC Siege LAN, I wouldn't do it because I know it wouldn't work. Like, it wouldn't guarantee that we're going to cover all the costs. And then once you've had 1 or 2 failed events, you start to get a little bit of a reputation, and then nobody trusts you to ever put events on again. So there are plenty. Yeah, there are plenty going back through history of attempts where they've perhaps been poorly researched, then poorly marketed. But then, like we were talking with publishers and every game having a different approach from a licensing point of view, every game has got a different approach from a marketing point of view as well. Every community hangs out somewhere different. Like, is it, does that community mainly live on Reddit still? Is it dedicated Discords? Like, most of the UK Valorant community hangs out in the Goose House Discord, for example. That's get those guys on board, and you've got Valorant there. How on earth do you get to whatever the UK CS community is? Because they're so scattered all over the place. And it's not just like you can throw traditional paid ads to try and get to some of these communities. Like, for us, it's just constantly engaging and talking with the players and communities. And try to bring those collections of different communities together, but everyone is slightly different.
Oh God, yeah, that makes. Oh God, I'm worried even thinking about even attempting to do that, like getting the UKCS people on board as well as like League of Legends fans and stuff. Like, yeah, that's.
But you said
that must be a huge stressor, just generally. Must be.
You said it right at the start. It's that whole, esports isn't just one. You can't just market to the esports audience and then expect
No,
700 people to turn up. You
no.
have to. Every game has its own fan base, viewership, marketing approach, publisher approach, and it's trying to understand those and work with those communities in a sort of organic way. In our case, um, it's not like we're putting on a major where we've got the huge teams coming along to the event that bring their own followings with them. Big teams don't come to it like it used to. Like EPIC.LAN used to attract some of the top UK CS teams going. Now it doesn't, and which is good because it's opened up the competition far more to be more.
Right. Did you have Smooya at an event
He's
not too
talking
long
about
ago?
coming to the next one. So
Right. Okay.
he comes back for fun these days. So
Yeah. Which
Smooya's
is cool.
first LAN event in the UK was EPIC.LAN.
Oh damn.
So
Not bad.
yeah, there's like a history piece that I think ESL did on him and his growth in UK esports a few years ago, and he says quite openly in there, yeah, he went to an EPIC.LAN first and then grew from there. So I think he's talking about coming back for October, which is nice in some ways, but it probably means that whatever mix he puts together will be a super mix and will win. But because people don't come necessarily to win, they come for that community side. The other teams in
Right.
CS case won't care about that. They will go because, yeah, we get to play against Smooya, we'll see him at the bar, it'll be a bit of fun. Other games, like if that same thing happened in Valorant, if a top Valorant team came to the event, I'm not sure they would see the same community side. I think they would see it as a threat and, well, we're not going to win, so what's the point of
Right.
going? Again, two different
Yeah.
communities and two very different approaches.
Yeah. CS has been around a long time, and that is a true community. Whereas like Valorant, I think is still figuring out what it is like. I still
Yeah.
think like probably the optimum way of even playing the game has still not been sussed out yet because it's early and a lot of CS players went across. Like so, it's its own kind of nuanced thing. And one thing we can't ignore when it comes to like running events. I know you say it's like community and not so much like cutthroat competition, but like ensuring competitive integrity is a
Yes.
huge thing. Like so, there's a lot of talk even at like the biggest events of like, oh, you need soundproof booths, and I think the Call of Duty League Championship World Championship that was going on recently, they were accusing like girlfriends of shouting when players were defusing and stuff. So it happens no matter where you're at. There's going to be potential threats to competitive integrity, right?
Yeah, can you ever rule out every possible scenario? I guess it's like put an event health and safety hat on. You do as much as you possibly can within the constraints of your budget and working environment and what you have available to reduce those chances. The nice thing we've got is we're on LAN, so that instantly rules out a lot of the online issues that you would get. Like for us, from a tournament point of view, yes, we've got EPIC.LAN community level. We try and introduce players into the absolute basics of how to take part in a tournament. So people will turn up having never taken part in anything structured before. But then at the end of this year, we're providing league ops for a tier 1 Valorant event. So we've got to understand both sides of the scale. For me, it's always been it's absolute basics, but it has always been about the rule book. I saw a tweet about the Dota major at the moment saying, I can't believe that there isn't a rule book published for this and the entire circuit around it that's open and transparent. And the league ops team that work with us sometimes hate me for saying it, but any question that comes in that we've not got covered in the rule book, I will then tell them to add in for next time, just so there's always something in black and white. And having it all written down, having consistency around decisions, sharing those decisions internally. I was having a similar conversation around the Beacon leagues recently for Valorant, saying actually we're operating one of the events in that circuit, so the Goose House and various other operators. Actually, we should all share our league ops decisions with each other. So if we've made a decision at our event, you guys then make exactly the same decision. So I know that's been taken on board. So yeah, there's nothing difficult about it. Okay, games get patched, bugs and exploits get found, and they change from every patch in a particular game. But the principles of that competitive integrity don't really change. Like it's just being honest, open, everything published. Like
Yeah.
It's not. I don't want to say it's not difficult, because being a tournament admin, league ops is one of the hardest roles in esports, and you are like literally on the front line, receiving all of the grief from
I was going to
audience,
say, I see
players,
someone getting
spectators.
shit like
Oh
every
yeah.
single week.
So I don't. I'm not saying it's not an easy job. And again, been
Mm,
there, done it, still actively do that for some of the events that we're involved in. But the principles are easy, and I know from listening to other podcasts, there were some questions around a recent Commonwealth event and some of the league ops decisions taken around that. What we
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know, like any of us in the industry, is what framework were they operating in? Who, like, what was the structure? What
Hmm.
was the rule? For me, I can't shit on any of the people involved in any of those decisions or discussions, because I don't know what framework they were operating in.
Right.
Hopefully, they had something to guide them, something set out on paper to make those decisions with, and there will be reasons for whatever those decisions were, and somebody has to justify them.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense without knowing that stuff.
It
So yeah,
doesn't.
it is easy to judge people for
Yeah,
those decisions. But if it's in the real rule book, or that's what the seniors are saying you have to do, then
exactly. The
that's
admins
how
on
it
the
goes.
ground are hopefully enforcing what they've been told to enforce. Now, whether that
Hmm.
rule book is right and can be changed, but even then, we don't know what schedules people have got to work with. We don't know if, again, there will be publishers in some cases who get involved in the detail of the rule book. So there are so many factors that we don't understand. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah,
And
we've
it'll
been
be like
pretty.
people volunteering their time and then getting absolutely shat on when something doesn't go the way
Yeah,
the majority want.
I
That's a
hate
bit tough.
that. And I hate it. Again, it's rarely the admin who's made a personal mistake in those sorts of scenarios. Again, moving on from the Commonwealth
Mm.
discussion, just
Yeah, yeah,
events in general. Like you say, almost every day on Twitter, you see some admin being slated for a decision or a change of decision. I think, again, it's just that consistency. The one thing that there should never be an excuse for is changing formats while the game is going on. That something's gone fundamentally wrong.
yeah.
Do
Hmm.
it between series, between stages, but while the game is happening, something has gone wrong somewhere. If something's going from best of 3 to 5 mid game and the players are already in the server, yeah, there's been some bad planning somewhere in those cases.
Yeah, I think I saw that for like Overwatch Contenders or something along those lines,
Yeah,
maybe a couple months ago as well. Again, like that doesn't get anywhere near as much focus as the Overwatch League and stuff, right? So it kind of is prevalent in that community, but outside of it, like you don't really see it too much. But yeah, it's a challenge, and I guess say I imagine by now you've got workers that come back for EPIC.LAN like year on year and help you out. But say if you were like preparing to staff an event from scratch, like what kind of avenues do you go down? Like who do you speak to? Where do you look, and who do you look for to like come and work at events?
you will see, particularly in the UK, almost the same crowd working most events. So the industry is still really heavily freelance driven.
Yeah.
That's something that internally we want to change. So we're advertising gradually more and more permanent posts. I think particularly post COVID, trying to give people more job security where we can. But yeah, you'll see a pool of admins, producers, replay operators, observers that do those circuits, and we all talk to each other. Like we talk to other operators constantly. So like ProMod as an example, we chat to those guys every few days, and like we may bring in people. We can take some risks with EPIC.LAN because it is at that amateur and community level, and we'll bring people in who've never worked an esports event before. Um, but then if somebody like ProMod or Blast or whoever said, like, we're looking for an admin for a tournament, we'll then pass on those recommendations. Similarly, everybody talks about some of the bad eggs as well. So I think there's an industry network, if you like, of people that work most of the esports events out there, and it is a small world. Um,
Right.
we rarely struggle to find people for the roles unless it's some super specific game. Again, like when we did Age of Empires with Red Bull, there are like 2 Age of Empires observers in the world at that sort of level. So we ended up flying a guy in who was brilliant, but I think we flew him in from Japan to Germany
Oh wow.
because he was like one of the few top tier observers in the game. Um, But yeah, the one thing I hate is sticking a tweet out saying I'm looking for talent observers, crew members, because I do get a lot of stuff then landing in DMs that's you've just not read what I'm looking for. So I try to avoid that where I can and use existing networks.
Right.
Or for some of the B2B events, if somebody's made a really good impression at our internal events, I'll use them. So one of the Valorant events we're doing in December for a client, we're using people who've been at the EPIC.LAN events because I know them, I trust them, I know they'll do a great job. If they can deal with the amateur players at EPIC.LAN, they can deal with tier 1 teams.
Got you. But like, say I'm new to the industry. I'm just really interested in gaming, competitive gaming, and I want to like work an event somehow. I'm happy to, I don't know, you the V word volunteer or whatever. Like, I'm not saying we endorse that here, whatever. But say I want to like break in, and as you say, it's all kind of network based and recommendation. Oh, a lot of it is recommendation based and stuff. How do I go about making that impression? Is it just like just as you said, like you get a lot of DMs and stuff when you actively seek these things. So like it seems to me like it's hard to break in and establish yourself at that level.
I think it is for the higher tier events. I think to go along and have a go and try, again, avoiding the V word, but sometimes if you don't know what you want to do, that is the best way of working it out. So like we had a guy who came to our last event who's due to leave the army, I think, in the next 12 months or so, and doesn't know what he wants to do careers wise, but he knows it's something to do with gaming. So he just like, can I just come along and see what it's like and try a few things? We had Jasmine Veracity as an example, who is killing it at the moment as a host. Like almost every week she's hosting another event somewhere around the world. She started with us as an admin, and during COVID said, I fancy getting into hosting. Can you just let me try hosting some of the stage shows with no experience? And we can afford to do that because it is an amateur event and people understand the expectations. So I think sometimes it is just reaching out to people. We have a lot of students, unsurprisingly, who are coming off graduation time. So whether it's volunteering or shadowing or work placements, like we're getting a lot of people reaching out to us now. And I think there will be more opportunities. Now the events world is coming out of COVID and more stuff is happening again. There will be more opportunities, whether it's with us or other operators, whether it is for shadowing or work experience or placements. So we're trying to formalize something with one of the universities running an esports degree. Again, whole different topic, but they want to work with an industry partner where every year on that degree course, the students take on a bigger role as part of their course, and it all counts towards the hours on the course. So year 1, semester 1, they come and visit the event. Semester 2, they help out for a couple of hours in a particular area. Year 2, they're going to take on a specific role. By year 3, they're going to work for the whole event, and that becomes part of their module. So instead of sitting in a classroom for 3 years, they've practically worked and set up esports events by the time they graduate. So
that sounds a good thing, by the way. Good on you for working on that.
And fair play to that university who reached out to us. But it is the university closest to where EPIC.LAN takes place, so it just makes perfect sense.
That makes sense. And are there any like major elements of events that we've completely missed at this point? Would you say, if it comes to like, wanting to run an event, I'll consider one.
I'm going to give two, I think. And I've got to give one because it's the core of what we do outside, but it is the technology that sits behind it. And by that, I don't mean the flashy lights and smoke machines and LED walls that everybody sees on stage. It's the core stuff that sits underneath that is always forgotten about, and it's the lowest priority. Things like, what are people playing on, whether it's the PCs people are playing on. Again, there's some horror stories of some terrible events where people have been playing on like 486s and that won't even run CS, or the network and the connectivity. Like, apart from CS and maybe one or two others, there are no LAN games anymore. Everything runs online. You can't really put on an esports event without an internet connection. You certainly can't broadcast it anyway. We get involved in a lot of projects where the venue has already been decided based on how the venue looks. It's great, nice, looks pretty on broadcast. Right. It's going to produce a fantastic show. we get brought in and talk to the IT guys who go, so what's the internet connection then? And they just bring out a 4G dongle and you've got to run the whole show on that. So it's always underestimated, but it will make or break your entire broadcast. And I think security, and I'm saying this because we had a bad event from a security point of view. I'll quite openly talk about how we had some bad eggs on security at our last event. I actually, for the first time ever, I had to remove a security guard from our event. The people who are there to protect our participants. But we are living in a world where there are some shit humans around. And we're also, like, everybody in esports is trying to create events that are inclusive and welcoming to everybody in all areas of the community. And we had some security who didn't fulfill that, so they had to be removed. But even that, like thefts, harassment, like you've got to protect everybody at those events, even the smaller events. Like, you're going to get a couple of bad eggs in there. And luckily, we've never had any like big thefts from our events, but we've had them from events we've been working at. Like, we've had monitors, headsets, peripherals nicked while we've been literally from under our noses while we've been setting up. So, yeah, security. Sadly, I wish it wasn't a necessity, but
yeah, because like I've been to big events and I've been to smaller events working as press, and some will make you scan your bag with your laptop in and chargers and everything, which is annoying if you're going in and out. Say you want to go out and get food or whatever, right? It's annoying, but it's like, okay, at least they're taking this seriously. And when you go to events where it doesn't have it and you can just walk in basically willy nilly, or you probably see that meme where there's a geezer or that gif where the geezer's just like doing that, right? I've had that a couple of times, and I'm like, well, this is not doing anything for anyone. Like, if someone could just walk in with a weapon right now and it doesn't matter, and that actually does kind of, it taints the whole experience. So yeah, security, even from like my point of view, not from like hiring security and stuff, right? Like, it can change the experience drastically.
Some of the bigger events have streamers or talent there who have hundreds of thousands, if not more, followers, and a lot of them stream as well, and they get harassed. Like, again, a horrible part of humanity, but there will be people who attend events with the intention of wanting to meet some of those talent members, or even the players. I'm sure there are players and teams out there who've got slightly obsessive fans, or just people who want to get an autograph but don't know the right way of going about it. Like, yeah, I think security is constantly going to be something that esports events need to keep assessing. And it's that balance of how do you keep an event open and accessible and let people have those fan experiences and meet their esports heroes, if you like, but protect them at the same time.
Oh, so basically the impression I get of running events based on our hour-long conversation now is,
which you said we didn't want to go,
because it sounds like a lot of work, mate. Like,
I still love it. There is a sadistic buzz at the end of it, like when you pack everything down and everyone walks out at the end and shakes hand, if you're allowed to shake hands anymore, and says thank you, really enjoyed it. There is a huge, because of the stress of putting an event on, the payoff at the end when it's all worked. I still really, really enjoy that, even after 19 years. There's just something about, we did it. We did a great job, and everybody's saying thanks. Maybe not after some of the disasters, but we haven't had that many disasters. Like, maybe we've been lucky, or maybe it's the effort we put in. But yeah, there is something about it that you can't replicate.
Well, I will say, not that I feel entitled to speak on behalf of UK esports, but I'm going to anyway. Thank you for doing what you do and keeping your events open to those, because as we discussed earlier on, like, it's effectively essential, as you say, like Smooya, like naming you guys and him getting to play for big and doing well in Cologne and stuff. Like, you can see the kind of role that can play. Like, so someone can go to one LAN and then realize, oh shit, like, this is what I want to do, and I have like something in me to make it happen here. And without events like your events, that may not happen for some people. So thank you for that. And also, on a personal note, thank you for taking the time to speak to me. I didn't think it'll go for an hour. I apologise for that, but
I think that's me. I just haven't,
the trend.
I haven't shut up, so cut
well,
it down.
I prefer, people are here to listen and watch you, not me anyway, mate. So So that's a good thing. So yeah, thank you very much for taking the time on.
No problem. And I'd always say, like, if we can help, I'm not always the quickest at replying to emails and DMs. But if people do just want to pick our brains, like, there's a few articles I put up on our site as well, just like how to pitch for freelance work, and like if people do want to pick my brain, like where to start, I will try and respond. Just bear with me if I'm a little bit slow, but I will always try and help people out with advice.
And your Twitter account will be linked, and EPIC.LAN's Twitter account will be both be linked in the description for the YouTube on the YouTube video, so
Nice.
people can go there and absolutely spam the hell out of you.
No,
So that's another episode of Make Your Mark for Hitmarker. Thank you, John. I appreciate it, mate. For those listening and watching, thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.